Right, there you have it, those live visuals coming to you from Moruleng Stadium, just outside Rustenburg in the Northwest Province, where the president of the ANC, President Cyril Ramaphosa, any moment from now, as prayers are underway, really marking the 114th anniversary of the ANC, President Cyril Ramaphosa preparing in just a moment to give that keynote address, one that will be highly empirical as we consider the circumstances that the ANC finds itself in, and of course the many challenges that we've heard from the community of the Northwest when it comes to issues of service delivery. But in studio, of course, I am joined by political analysts to give us a sense of some of the expectations as we wait on President Cyril Ramaphosa to deliver the annual January 8th statement, an address that traditionally sets the political tone for the year ahead and signals the governing party's priorities across all spheres of government. And joining me in studio is political analyst Professor Alex van der Heever, as well as Moruleng Stadium. So a very good afternoon to you both, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, and all viewers of SABC.
Perhaps, Professor, let me start with you. You know, we've listened to my colleagues speaking in the Northwest, just really observing the location. The Moruleng Stadium is not packed to capacity as expected. And we know that we heard President Cyril Ramaphosa saying, if it's 30,000 people filling that stadium, he will be pleased with that number. In assessing that, I mean, what does it indicate as we look at the time, the political climate of the ANC at such a time?
Well, we have to understand that the ANC was never going to remain, the whole idea of a democratic dispensation is that political parties compete. And that at the end of the day, if you don't deliver in many cases, you're going to lose support to other political parties. Yeah. So in essence, what we're seeing at this moment is potentially a shift away from the ANC to other political parties. That's a natural expectation. The drop in membership and the participation at this particular event are indicative of that. But they are also indicative of the fact that the ANC has also, it's carrying essentially the consequences of having failed to deliver in many cases for many South African citizens at municipal, provincial and national level. And it's going to have to give a new vision and present that to South Africa. And if it doesn't, this is very likely to continue.
Moruleng, just before we got on air, you were speaking about the show of confidence, or perhaps a loss of confidence when it comes to ANC members, given, in fact, as we observe the many service delivery challenges. I mean, just on Thursday, as you know, the cake cutting event was set to happen, we heard President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking quite extensively about what he's seeing, the potholes, and promising that they will be fixed. That in itself also showing.
Yeah, no, it's important. Thank you very much. I think it's quite important that this poor attendance should also be located within the people losing confidence in government, not only in the ANC, but body politics of the country. Therefore, it is quite important to look at this from the voter turnout of the last election, 2024. You would understand that in 2024, only 58% of the population went to vote. And looking at the Northwest, which is now the host of this January 8th statement, it was the lowest in terms of turnout. Northwest, I think it was 50%, followed by Limpopo with 51% and Eastern Cape with 52%, which that on its own, it shows that the ANC, these are the provinces that in the main would be seen as the ANC stronghold. And look at the legibility to vote and registration. You would see that in 1919, since 1999, we had situation wherein the gap between the registered to vote and eligible to vote, it has been widening since from between 6 million to 8 million. Yeah. And in 2019, it went to 10 million. In the last election, the number of people who actually eligible to vote vis-a-vis those who have registered, it went to 12 million in the last elections. That on its own, it shows that this can also be attributed either to logistical problems or people losing confidence in the government that is, of course, unable to promise to deliver what it promised. In the State of the Nation address in February, the president made commitment that we have accepted that in towns refuse removal are not collected, tar roads are not maintained, and he further indicated that sewer is running all over the street. And he called for the review of the funding model to local government. That is something that I think in this particular January 8th is got to stress and give feedback with respect to that to the people of South Africa.
While we're still talking about, how important this year will be when it comes to the municipal elections, Prof, I think what Moruleng has touched on is quite important. We cannot forget that as all these celebrations happen, they come under rather difficult circumstances, considering the internal divisions and strained relations, particularly as we look at the position of the SACP, who are adamant to go into elections independently.
Well, I see that there are a lot of factions operating within the ANC, and this is largely a consequence of it having been a dominant party for so long, in that its control over state resources has meant there is significant patronage, and there are also differences in policy position.
Yeah.
So, but patronage has been dominant as a feature of what is essentially a dominant political party, which isn't good for South Africa, because it means that patronage politics is not actually about delivering to citizens, it's about delivering to people who are part of that political party structure. The SACP has long been at odds with certain of the policies as well, not necessarily the patronage, but it has been involved in it. So the issue is now, we see people are starting to say, well, the ANC is falling apart, the factions are starting to separate, we've seen certain factions become other parties. And this is part of what will essentially be the political competition that goes forward in South Africa. The question that we will have to see is whether that political competition becomes genuine competition on delivery, as opposed to competition to control state resources and to become the gatekeeper. Because at this point in time, in many of the municipalities, many of the provinces, and many of the state institutions at national level and public entities at all levels of government, the patronage and gatekeeper power has been used for nefarious purposes. And as a consequence, we've had a systematic failure to deliver. And part of that has been that government, through all those levels, hasn't actually held people to account. It hasn't used government structures and laws to throw out the people and kick out the criminals in the state who've used party structures to get into positions of power. So the question is, how is this political dynamic going to evolve going forward? The issue of loss of confidence in the state is potentially a transitional process, because society in South Africa hasn't yet taken advantage of the fact that they can kick out the government. They can choose their own government. They can listen and work out what dynamics gives an incentive to somebody who's a councillor or somebody who's a mayor to actually want to deliver, as opposed to just sit there for 5 years and direct tenders toward their friends. People have power over them. And now the question is, are they going to exercise that power? And that's where the confidence gets restored in government, is when people start to exercise their power.
In fact, I'm glad you touched on some of the challenges, the elements of corruption that you talk about and accountability. And Moruleng, of course, we know that the ad hoc committee has been, very much of a big focus as we listen to comments like what we heard of controversial businessman Brown Mokhosi talking about how monies were exchanged and, also linking it to some of the work of the ANC. I mean, with that cloud and us now looking to hear the outcome of this January 8th statement, how significant do you think, what comes out of those commissions is in charting a way forward? Because what we will expect here is for ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa to give marching orders as we wait to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, no, indeed, thank you. Marching orders have to be given with respect to what needs to happen to fight corruption. But remember, when you read chapter 14 of the National Development Plan, there's a clear indication of what needs to happen in terms of fighting corruption, including strengthening the judicial system, strengthening law enforcement agency in general. But nothing has tangibly happened with respect to that. In my view, from where I'm standing, from 2012, since the adoption of the National Development Plan until to date, we couldn't be having the stories of Brown Mokgosi and the Madlanga Commission had the leadership could have taken that stance. I would make a practical example. In 1997, the President Mandela, in the conference of the ANC in Mahikeng, stated very clearly. He said, we are only 3 years in government. Now we are more than 30 years. We are only 3 years in government, but already we see the emergence of some corrupt elements within the movement. And we need to find a way, mechanism to close that particular gap of allowing corrupt elements to get into the movement. So that on its own, I think the movement could have long dealt with that particular issue, wouldn't be having all this Madlanga Commission and ad hoc committee to deal with issues of corruption. I mean, the diagnostic report of the National Planning Commission of 2011, it's quite clear. The problem is that instead of having leadership to deal decisively with the matters, they will then come and create another structure, which it is a problem from where I'm standing, creating structure and being decisive. I mean, the very same chapter 14 of National Development Plan says it was calling, in fact, for national dialogue on the type of leadership that we are providing as a country to the society, from politics, civil society, and even in private sector or business. That was what was called for, and that on its own, it shows that the National Planning Commission indicated that for us to be able to deliver within the aspirations of National Development Plan, we need 2 things: strong leadership and participatory citizens.